episode 93 of A Gamer Looks at 40. I'm Bill Tucker, and welcome to Side Quest Volume 8, a series of intros and hellos, Part 2. That's a lot of parts and episode numbers and volumes. Suffice to say, this is the second half of a very large amount of content and recordings and interviews I culled together in the midst of all of the interviews and work I did for the Mario Paint episode, the Rental Games episode, and the Earthbound series. If you haven't listened to those, I recommend it. There's some new voices on the show with some really unique perspectives, and frankly, I think they're a lot of fun. I am a fan, but then again, I am biased. Starting us off on part 2 is a conversation with Brian, aka Day and Nightly on Twitter. He was involved in the Rental Game episode quite heavily and other things as well. Really good guy, a great conversationalist. So let's listen to what he has to say about his initial contact with games and why he loves them oh so much. So Brian, hey man, thank you so much for joining me to talk a bit about the days of renting video games from actual physical stores.
Thanks
I remember those days. Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And it's the pleasure's all mine for sure. So Brian, first, before we get started on that topic, I'd love to hear a bit about where you started with games, your first touch point with video games, and we'll kind of start the conversation from there.
Yeah, no problem. So I will endeavor to keep it semi-short because I could just go on and on about it when it comes to games. I really enjoy it. And it starts with kind of a family game night. Growing up, this would be Friday nights. There were a couple things. It would be the family, obviously part of family game night, pizza, and TGIF Fridays. I don't know if you remember those days where, a very specific, very wholesome block of TV that like sort of, and that was the one time, well, that's not true because we had Saturday morning cartoons, but that was like, these weren't cartoons. These were, real adults and adult situations like, Susie's, someone offered her drugs and, oh, look out. And the girl doesn't like Corey. So how's he going to react? So just a lot of great memories of that time. And we would always play not a video game, but a board game. So that's what got me into games. I still love board games because they still do what video games do easier, which is transport you to another time, another place, just a whole nother experience that I just love and really get into. So that's kind of love of games, and that just easily moved into video games, arcade machines at the roller rink, classic, begging for the quarters, trying to find quarters, and loving it that way. And then I had it was a thing where my grandma had a Nintendo. So we'd have a week in the summer where my brothers and I individually, mind you, we didn't go all at once. She gave us each a week, which a week at grandma's is we just got to do whatever we wanted. We could eat whatever we wanted. Yes. I mean, just really kind of, as a kid, it was like summer vacation on steroids. It was even better than summer vacation.
Yeah, totally.
And so, yeah, she had cable and she had a NES. And so those are things I did not have at home. And, it was like we were never going to get it. So that was something like she wanted to have. And she did have because, quote, she's like, I wanted to be the cool grandma. I wanted you guys to come over and have fun. So we did. And
that's awesome.
Like playing Nintendo with her. Like the original Super Mario Brothers, switching off Mario and Luigi, which of course the only person gets to play whenever player one dies. So I would play for like 20 minutes and then she played for like 8 seconds. But she still played with me, and it was just awesome. So that just cemented all kinds of fun, and like games were something to look forward to. It was like something to really be treasured.
Interesting.
And
if I just pause for one moment.
No, yeah.
So it sounds like you had grandma's was where all the fun was at because she had the games and everything else. Did she also have like a talking chair like Pee-wee's Playhouse? Did she have a slide down the stairs? This place sounds amazing. Yeah, your grandma sounds awesome.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
She is and she was, and I think in some of my higher sugar-induced moments, I wouldn't pass the chair. I wouldn't put it past the chair to maybe say something, or like could have swore I heard something, because I mean it would be like. Yeah, like ice cream. Oh my gosh! I mean, whatever whatever you wanted. So dreams do come true. At least whenever you're a little kid.
So you moved to the NES. When did you get your first console? Because it sounded like that was again at grandma's house. What was your first console?
Let's see. So my first actual console that I owned would be the Sega Genesis. I was in high school, and so that was like, oh, I have I'm getting my own money now, and I'm going to be responsible. So I responsibly, got a Sega Genesis, and that was to play. I mentioned the arcade earlier. That was to play Street Fighter 2. That's why I got it. Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition. That's why I got the Sega Genesis. And I thought, foolishly, of course, as maybe some people do, that if I got that, then I that's it, because that was a long-term goal. Like, these were, whether, in anticipation. So the NES is at my grandma's house, and, there's that, Seventh Heaven, week in summer. That's great. And then, we would see her, throughout the year. But I mean, that's it, the rest of the weeks, the rest of the months, it's just kind of, they're just, patiently waiting. Excuse me. But yeah, it was this, Sega Genesis was the first, and I thought, so Street Fighter 2 was a goal ever since I was in that arcade. Like, I have to get this game. These are characters I relate to. Street fighting. Hadoukens. This is stuff that I'm doing all the time naturally as well. So
absolutely, yeah, right. We all grew up throwing fireballs and doing
exactly. So I was finally able to get it, beat it with Honda. That's not relative. Nice. That's not relative, other than I've never been as good as I was at, whatever teen years old whenever I beat it the first time. So I have never looked back, and I've because now I'm terrible. But that was also, I did that, very proud of that. But really, like, I thought, that's great. I got the Genesis. I got this game. This is all I want. And then it was like, well, there's some other cool games out there, and I'd like this game, and once I have this game, and then that really is the same feeling I have now many years later. Well, yeah, I've got what I want, but once I get this one and I save up for this one, then I'll be all set. When we're talking about like games you played, there is a game for the NES that I loved called Silent Service, which you were a submarine captain. I would recommend this one for its charm, way over Wrath of Black Mana, like not even in the same league. And I say charm because you were like you're the submarine captain, but you're like the one man on the sub, and you're this dude in like a shirt and jeans. Like it would actually show you, and so it's like, look at map, and then you would like look at the map to see maybe where the ship convoys where you could sink, and then it was use periscope, and so like like the little graphic of the guy is there, and then you would move the cursor over to the periscope, and he would just instantly teleport there, then you'd be looking through it. But it was such a fun game. It was intense. I mean, you're a sub, you're below the surface, you only have a limited amount of torpedoes. You can get to the surface with a deck gun and try to take these convoys out. The ships would catch on fire. Like, they wouldn't just sink. It wasn't just a one and done. Like, it's going to take a couple torpedoes with these guys. But then there were always, depth charges they could possibly get you with, and
this is crazy.
Yeah,
screenshots as you're talking. So basically when you're inside the sub, it's like a Maniac Mansion style point and click thing.
Yeah.
You go to the map, the periscope, you have your character.
Yeah.
And then when you're actually looking through the periscope, it's got like target range, target course speed, angle, lead angle, sonar, like it's in depth. You have your speed knots.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
That's
and
cool.
That's
really cool.
That theme song for that game is one of my favorite. It like fits it to a T. Oh, it is
Cool.
it is perfect. So really like that one. Oh yeah, for sure.
If you could pick one game that made you a fan, because obviously, so kind of back it up a little bit. You know, I think as kids we were easily distracted, and I know a lot of kids who played video games as kids, and then as they got older, they fell away. You know, life, college, high school, right? They fell away, and there's some people who stuck with it to the point now where here we are on a video game podcast talking about you know silent scope and silent service and whatnot, right? So clearly it's made an impact on you. If you had to point to one game in your fandom that made you more than a casual fan, that turned you into saying, this is something I love and I want to continue doing, what do you think that game would be for you?
Oh man, that is a great question. I want to give you a clear front runner, you know, something where, like this is the one and this clearly connects. You know, there was this moment where I was gonna, you know, where I was like, okay, well, you know, I don't have time for this anymore. There are the things, and, you know, priorities shift. You know, what kept my, you know, priority, as in, this is something that I enjoy, that I really like. And the closest I can get, you know, without serious study of, you know, half the games that I probably don't even remember, there was a strategy game that came out. It's called Shogun Total War, and this was for PC, and this is whenever I went to college, and it was unlike anything I had ever played, and it was one of those cases where, you know, sort of the hype I had in my mind and what I was planning on doing and what I hoped it would be actually exceeded my expectations. And it's like the rush and the just the actual rush of, like, you know, controlling these warring factions across Japan, and you've got, you've got your map, and this is, based in history, which I'm, you know, a big sucker for, so I'm already sold. And, you know, it's not just, all right, you've got to, you know, move the battlefield. It's like, yes, it has that tactical element and where you're moving your army and you can actually control that army. But then it would be, you know, it's like turn-based, where the rest of the time you're looking at the map. And that part was actually much more intriguing to me, where it's like, oh, you know, you were on your way to a dynasty, but all your sons have been killed by ninjas, you know, whap, you know, or, you know, oh, you should have thought about that. And I mean, I'm not describing something that, you know, many other people haven't played or, you know, played earlier, but this was something to me that whenever I went, like whenever I went away to college, and it was like, how am I going to spend my money? How am I going to spend my time? I partially spent it on, okay, I had always wanted a top of the line PC, because I'm like, oh, I mean, that would be amazing. So I finally did that. And then this is one of the games I got with that. And it, like I said, it just exceeded and provided something that I couldn't get any other way. Like nothing even comes close. So I'm not saying it's the greatest game I've ever played. I'm not sure. I'd be hard pressed to answer that one. That would be even harder than this question. But like right now, as you're asking me, that's the game that did not disappoint. that I had invested time and money into making it possible. And whenever it was possible, like that's what that was one of my best experiences in college, was playing that game, playing GoldenEye with, everybody on the whole floor of the dorm, and Mario Kart 64, so that
the
was
college era. Seems like it was a really impactful time. And I think Shogun Total War, I know of it, and I did a quick search for it while you were talking about it. It's interesting because it sounds like that game was something you kind of worked for, because you had to build the PC to run it. You couldn't just pop it into a console. It required graphics cards in an era where that stuff was not easy to do. And it sounds like you developed that connection because just in the way not only what the game was playing, but it was probably the era in which you were playing it. And that kind of I think it sounds like you had a lot of agency. In that entire experience.
Yeah.
Of course, we all played GoldenEye and Mario Kart with friends in dorm rooms. I mean, that was like, I was in college when I was around the year 2000. So
nice.
That was definitely part of that system. But I love the fact that Shogun Total War for you is one of the ones that came up to say, yes, not only did I love that game, it sounds like you had a connection to it because, and not to put words in your mouth, but this is what it sounds like. Yeah. You invested time, money, and attention to it in an era, college, where you don't have a ton of time. Classes are hard, there's lots of distractions.
Oh yeah, well,
and money's not necessarily the easiest thing to come a hold of either.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I'll be being honest about it. That that souped up PC, that was my graduation money. That was everyone comes and then you can do with this what you want. We wish you the best. And, of course, there are a lot of things that you could do with that money. There are many things that, one would argue, you should do with that money. And yet that is what I really wanted to do. And that's what I did. And so, it's not like if I would have played, Shogun Total War and didn't have fun with it, it would have been like, oh no, I've wasted. I mean, no way. Like there are tons of great games, but this game answered that call. It
lived up to every expectation.
Exactly. Oh yeah, and definitely exceeded it. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Right on, dude. Now, one of my favorite parts of doing this podcast is hearing the different stories and perspectives of everybody involved. You have people who have close personal ties to games, you have people who have close emotional ties, and you have people also who just like games and have fun, and that's a great part of it too. But one of the subsets of people that I really have gravitated towards over the last couple of years have been the people who think deeply about the medium and the art of video games. People like the Well-Read Mage and Seth from All In Podcast, people who really dig deep into the critique and the art of it and think deeply about games. Sam from Retrologic, definitely one of those people. And another person who I met in the course of the Earthbound episodes and interviews was Kat Blackard. She is exceptional. One of my favorite interviewees from the entire Earthbound podcast. She is an exceptional podcaster and thinks deep about games. And when I have conversations with people like her, I'm reminded that you can do this with video games. You can have an in-depth conversation, dig deep, and really mine out what makes a game work, not work, special or not special, just through that conversation. So many thanks to Kat for just spending so much time with me on the Earthbound stuff, and also just for taking more time than I could have ever expected, also introducing me to some people. So thank you very much, Kat, for being a part of the show. Here are some more conversations with her about her intro to games and a variety of other topics that just happened to pop up during our interview. So, Kat, thank you so much for joining me today to talk a bit about a game that sounds like has a lot of meaning to you, Earthbound. But before we get started on that conversation, I'd love to first just chat with you a bit about your early history with games, how you got started playing games, like those first influential titles, and we'll kind of just start talking from there.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. So let's see. I was born in 1984, and let's see, I didn't grow up with cable. I didn't grow up with an older sibling. I didn't grow up with an adult that had a video game console. So being aware of that, being aware of any kind of like late 80s and early 90s cultural zeitgeist stuff, I was aware of it, and I wanted it intensely. The biggest thing that I was like attached to was like, Star Wars, which was at that point, not in vogue, and like Ninja Turtles.
Right.
Ninja Turtles I was all about. Ninja Turtles I could get my hands on. Ninja Turtles was on basic television.
Yes.
But video games, that was really special. I remember like I was in preschool and I was at like a kid's birthday, this like rich kid, and he had an NES, and there were a bunch of kids playing Super Mario Brothers 2. And that was probably the first time that I got my hands on an actual video game console. I was very bad at it, but I was also, I was ready for more.
Yeah.
Eventually, like an uncle got an NES, and this is somebody who is like, I would see maybe once every couple years. And through that, I got hands-on with like Mario 3 and The Legend of Zelda, and spent a lot of time in that. That was very formative and good. But eventually, my parents ended their quest to try to make sure that I wouldn't be an indoor kid, or rather, their quest to make sure I was an outdoor kid exclusively. Anyway,
Right.
It failed. It failed, and they consented to get a Super Nintendo.
Nice.
So
Excellent.
my younger brother and I had a really, really exceptional Christmas that involved Link to the Past and Super Mario World on the
so
same
good.
day. And that, as I'm sure you can imagine, is an earth-shattering cluster bomb of interactive entertainment to like just soak in all the beautiful cathode rays.
I love how those Christmases, right? Did you have that moment when you got what did it feel like when you got that Super Nintendo? What was can you think back to that moment under the tree, I'm assuming, or by a tree or whatever, and opening that present, seeing that box and knowing what was in there? I don't know. I like diving into those moments because they're really formative. Like you said,
I was trying to think about that. I don't remember that moment, that Christmas threshold moment. Not that one. I remember others.
Mhm.
But what I do remember is I remember turning it on for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And that's I think that just kind of that moment of like that weird little like glittery chirp of the Nintendo logo when Super Mario World turns on.
Yeah.
That kind of obliterated the rest of the day. Nothing else exists.
Did you have to go to like a family member's house for dinner or something? That was always our thing. It was like, I'm getting into the game. It's 2 p.m. Billy, you gotta go to grandma's house. And I'm like, no, I'm in Mario.
To the best of my knowledge, after the like basic morning Christmas rituals were done, like midday, Christmas Day, from then on, it was just my brother, my dad, and I, and the Super Nintendo.
That's cool. Did your parents played with you a bit?
My dad did a bit. My mom wasn't really interested, but my dad had a curiosity about things like that, while also having a lot of reservations about it. And really, the only game he ever intensely got into was a Super Nintendo game that was a World War I flight simulator called Wings 2 Aces High.
I think I know that game. I think I know that. Okay. Interesting. Was it just because it was like World War II and
Yeah, he was like a like war machine aficionado in a kind of passive kind of way.
Sure.
Don't really know how to characterize that because he wasn't like a warmonger type. He just kind of, I don't know, let's say autistically liked the war machines.
Okay, fair. Fair. That's fine. Yeah, kind of like from a historical standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, it was really influential to me to see this like uncle have having an adult really caring about video games and being able to talk with me about them and the structure and the puzzles and the storytelling of it, like as a child, and respecting me to have those conversations, that was huge. That was a completely alien experience, which I carried with me. I kind of recognized that was special, and that maybe the relationship that my parents had with the media that I was interested in was not necessarily the only discourse from someone their age.
Right. I can definitely see how, again, that would be pretty formative and special, right? Because it's something you love that you're sharing with somebody. That's cool. Was there a certain, because obviously that Super Nintendo was that big moment where you're like, wow, this is amazing. Was there a game or a system or even a moment that turned you from someone who played games, again, as a kid to someone who loved it? Not formative moment, but maybe one of those sea change moments where, okay, this is something I'm going to create stuff about and really get into, as opposed to just being like a hobby.
You know, I think from the onset, I saw the creative potential of video games. Even before I had a system, I was buying magazines about them. I was looking at all the side scroller, like screen capture maps and stuff, and replicating them myself. I saw the template of video games as a canvas, as a creative outlet, and especially once I started playing them myself, like games like Super Star Wars. It's it's a fine platformer,
right?
But from that, I think maybe a little bit of Earthworm Jim influence. I in I want to say third grade started drawing effectively side scroll maps, like taking an 8.5 sheet of paper, turning it horizontally oriented, and then drawing continuous levels of a surrealist video game platformer. And
interesting.
I did the same thing for I wanted a sequel to A Link to the Past, so I started drawing maps.
That's cool.
And items and all kinds of different stuff. None of it ever went anywhere. I never really focused in on it until I played Earthbound.
I could have this conversation for the next hour. I have actually a hard stop in a few minutes. I have another interview lined up. But before we close, I would love to do more of this because, again, I find it fascinating. I love your perspective on it. I also want to get into the community surrounding Earthbound because I think the community is incredible. I had no idea there was such a community around Earthbound until I started playing it and researching it and doing the work for this episode. But I would love to hear a little bit about the podcast that you're starting, or has it started yet? I know it's coming very soon, or has started.
Yeah. So myself and my partner Jessica Mudd, we have a show called Mother She Wrote, which is it's a podcast, and it's a hybrid of audio drama and talk podcast, much like this one, where we wanted to make a show that would invite people in, even if they aren't able to or simply don't have the time to play these games. They're an important part of the pop culture landscape at this point. And they can be sort of difficult to get into, or, I have friends who just can't invest this kind of time, but they're curious about it. So through audio drama, we've created these very light adaptations of pieces of the game. So every episode starts with a piece of the game that you yourself can experience, whether or not you've played it. And we're going sequentially through the entire trilogy of the Mother/Earthbound games. It's out now. You can find it at mothershewrote.earth and on any podcast player.
I think that's fascinating. I love the concept of combining again audio drama and this kind of conversational format. I think it's gonna be really interesting. I can't wait to listen to it myself, and I just need to have this Earthbound episode done because I want to make sure all my reactions are pure, and then I'm gonna dive into your show because I can't wait to kind of explore that and see what you all have going on, because it sounds really, really fascinating. And you've done other shows too, right? You've done yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got a long storied career in podcasts. I was the host of Nerdy Show, which was at one point the longest running games and hobbies podcast, and was a pop culture journalist for a long time. But these days, I'm best known as the showrunner of the Call of Cthulhu Mystery Program, which is a horror comedy historical fiction audio drama podcast. If you like Lovecraftian horror, you may be so inclined to check it out. It's at CthulhuMystery.com.
Yeah, I saw, and I was looking at your Twitter bio, and I saw that up there. It's like, okay, that's my next, because I do love Cthulhu mythos and all that stuff. So I think, again, that's another one that's kind of right up my street. So yeah.
If you dig Earthbound, we have an anthology show. So every season's a different story. I highly recommend checking out what is season 4. It's called Night at Howling House. It's got a bunch of kids in peril, so it's right on point with a lot of influences from Stephen King, and yes, indeed, some very subtle influences from.
Awesome, that's so cool. Just wanted to take a quick moment to thank my wonderful patrons for their patronage. It is greatly appreciated, and I truly love each and every single one of you, including Terry Kinnair, Greg Seward of the Player One podcast and Generation 16 series of videos, Games with Coffee, The Let's Play Princess, Theodore LaBarbera, BT Goebbels, Tim Knowles of The Leadist, Nerds Without Pants' very own Julian, Seth Sergil of the All M podcast, and the one and only Pete Harney. Many thanks to you and to everybody who has supported the show financially over the last 2+ years. Your support and your trust in me means more to me than I can probably accurately express. Let's jump back into the episode. Next up, Ian, aka TeacherBloke85 on Twitter, talks a bit about the trials and tribulations of borrowing games from friends, while Jodi, aka Backwhale, and then Lucas White both talk about their first interactions with the video game medium. Anything you picked up that you fell in love with?
Lilac Wars. Which you will know as Star Fox 64.
Yes.
Very strange. Don't know why they called it that over here, but that was a rental for me, as was Pilot Wings on the N64.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Now, did you end up buying those games after renting them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's been a few that I borrowed from friends, really, more than the ones that I got from the rental shops, but there were a lot of games that I borrowed from friends, and likewise I let some of my games be borrowed and never got them back. But
that's now that's the risk that happens.
It's the risk. I should be keeping tabs on who's got what, and I should be collecting on those fines right now.
This might be a slight diversion, but do you have any games that you recall never getting back? Like, was there one that you're like, this kid didn't give back to me, and then you realize now it's 20-something years later or whatever, and you're like, this kid never gave me back Street Fighter 2. So was there anything like that you can remember that was really traumatic and not getting back?
Final Fantasy Tactics Advance.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah.
That had to hurt.
It still does.
Oh, no.
For the longest time, I thought my brother had it, but he doesn't.
No.
And now I'm trying to think
rough.
who's got it, and am I still in touch with them, and do I care?
I have one that I borrowed and still have, and it's been 15 years.
Really?
Maybe 12 years, yeah.
What is it?
I feel bad. It's it's the orange box for PS3.
Right.
Yeah, so Portal, Team Fortress,
Yeah.
Half-Life 2. Yeah, I borrowed it from a
love the
friend
orange box.
at work. And I just moved. And it just came with me. Still here. I still have it. So if you're listening, I don't honestly don't remember the person's name. To be perfectly honest, I don't even know. So if you're listening and you're missing the orange box, please reach out to me at a gamer looks at 40 on Twitter. I will mail it back to you. I have the box and everything.
Oh man,
just sitting there.
I did do a swap for keeps, which I don't normally do. I remember trading with a friend of mine at school. He wasn't a very close friend, but we always talked RPGs between lessons, things like that. I remember trading him my copy of Tactics Ogre on the PS1, which was an import. Kind of sad to miss that from my collection now, but he traded me his genuine copy of Vandal Hearts. So 2 very similar games, but I prefer Vandal Hearts because after each round of combat, you get your people back. I get attached to my people, but I thought that was possibly one of the smartest trades I made, because we only did it just for a weekend, and I said, hey, I prefer this. Do you want to swap these for keeps? He was like, yeah, sure.
Jodi, thanks so much again for taking the time today to chat a bit about the ye old days of renting games. I think that's what we're talking about today. Yeah, renting games. And so, man, let's just start off with the basics. Where did you rent? Well, where are you from originally? And where did you rent games? Kind of what was that situation like in your hometown?
Sure. So I'm from, it's the 3rd biggest city in Newfoundland, Canada. Corner Brook is where I grew up.
Okay.
So Corner Brook is about 20,000 people, not real big. And I was around 11 or 12 when we finally got a Blockbuster. So I do have a little bit of, I did rent a little bit from Blockbuster, and later Jumbo Video, which kept stuck around when Blockbuster closed.
Wow.
But when I was young, it was the convenience store. Hilltop Store was the name of the one. It was literally, I could walk there 10 minutes from my house. And They had a whole back wall that was behind the grocery section that was movies. And if you went around a little corner, there was one little wall of a bunch of Nintendo games and a couple of Super Nintendo games that I never rented because I never had a Super Nintendo.
Gotcha. That's so fun. So convenience store. That's cool. How long were the rentals for? You remember?
So I think they were like $2 or $3.
Okay.
And that was for the weekend.
Okay.
But if you got them on Monday, they'd let you keep them till the next weekend because not many people were renting during the week.
Oh, okay. So you could rent them like Monday through Friday, but you had to have them back Friday for the weekend rush.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the weekend,
sense.
that would only be like for one day. Like you could rent it for Saturday or for Sunday. But then you could pay the same price to get it all week.
Oh, that's kind of lame. But that's not too bad because if you get it on Monday, you can play it after school or when homework is done. Yeah.
Get your homework done quick and then you can play, right?
That sounds awesome. I love that convenience store. That's so fun. I also love the fact you had a rental house called Jumbo Video. That's just, I don't know, man. I
had
just
an
love
elephant for a little logo. And
that's cool.
That's where you could get they had free popcorn while you browse movies.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, yeah.
That's very
Jumbo
cool.
was a lot of fun. That's when I was an adult and actually had money. So I didn't do a lot of renting because I actually bought my games then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as you do when you get older and you have disposable income, you're like, what can I do with this cash? Save it. Nope. Buy video games. Yep. That's what I'm going to do. Yep. Of course.
There was 2 games I used to rent there a lot.
Oh, yeah? What was that?
So I had GameCube at that point. So I used to rent Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
Okay.
To play with my nephew and my cousin because we all had Game Boy Advances, so we could all hook up and do multiplayer with it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That was only the second time I ever played a Final Fantasy game, actually.
Really? Okay.
And the other one was GoldenEye Rogue Agent.
GoldenEye Rogue Agent. I don't even know this one.
Yeah, so you're playing an agent who ends up killing James Bond in a training accident in the first mission. And you have a little golden eye that lets you do different things, like you could see through walls and different stuff. My favorite in that is, especially in the multiplayer, me and my cousin used to play it a lot. He was my roommate for a while. Your eye could see through walls, and you could get a mag rail that could shoot through the walls. So you could just watch people coming up and shoot them. They'd never even know you were there. And it was
that's
a one-hit
so
kill
funny.
with the mag rail.
That's really funny. It's like Deus Ex almost, like Mankind Divided or something. Or Human Revolution. That's funny.
But it wasn't a great game, like going back and playing it, just like the original GoldenEye, like going back. But at the time, it was just so much fun. And that's
really funny.
Yeah, it's one of the few games I actually beat that I rent. I rented it 3 or 4 times and played through the whole campaign.
All right, Lucas, hey, thanks for joining me today to talk about a bunch of topics. We'll get into what those are. But before we get started, I'd love to hear a bit about yourself, maybe your first touch point into video games, and we'll kind of just start from there.
Sure. No, thanks for having me. I guess you could say that I am one of those, what we call game journalists. It's a catch-all for a lot of different jobs, but
sure. Yeah.
Internet full-time content person, video games. And that's pretty much been my whole life for like the past 10 plus years. So I'm in my early 30s, been playing games just about as long. It's been, up to my eyeballs in games since as far as I can remember, pretty much.
Yeah, man. What was your first system?
The first system I had was a Super Nintendo.
Nice. Nice.
Which I believe was like 94, 95. So it was like on its way out the door.
Wow. Yeah. You were late. So you were late to the Super Nintendo game, but you were coming in with all the classics. You had like Final Fantasy 3 and, Donkey Kong Country, Mario RPG. So you came in at the right time because those early SNES days were a little rough, to be honest with you. Some of those games are not great.
Specifically, when I got it, it was like the Donkey Kong bundle. So I've got like pretty vivid memory. Like the box was just that tree render just all over the box. It was just dark.
Yeah. Nice.
It's really hard to forget.
It's a very very evocative box. I know exactly when you're talking about too. That's really funny. Cool, man. So where can people find your work? Are you currently doing the games journalism thing? Kind of where can people find you?
Yeah. Up until pretty recently, I was at Prima Games. That was like my full-time job, capital J. There's a recent-ish round of layoffs, so I'm like freelancing now.
Okay.
I was on Kotaku recently for the Jedi Survivor review.
Oh, nice.
I've also been on Shack News recently.
Yep.
So that's kind of like my two most recent haunts.
Next up, we have John and Katie. Now, you may remember them from the Earthbound community episode. When I was first conceiving the episode and kind of what sort of people I would like to have on there were a bunch of people I reached out to and never heard back. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, man, I would love to get a couple. For some reason, I feel like when people connect in the real world, thanks to these virtual worlds, there's something magical about that for me. And I was really, really happy when I looked up Jonathan and his work and saw that his girlfriend, his partner, Katie, was doing some videos with him. And I'm like, oh, can I get them both on an interview? And sure enough, I did. And I was super, super grateful for that. They're really a charming couple. It's a great segment of that episode 88, if you haven't listened to it. But for now, let's listen in on the balance of the conversation that didn't make the original episode, where we talk about their content creation and some of the work they've been doing in the Earthbound community and outside of it. I'd love to hear a bit about both of your content creation as well. Katie, we can start with you. I know you do artwork, and I'm looking at your Twitter and some really cool artwork that you've been doing. How is Earthbound... Oh, you're very welcome, of course. How has Earthbound inspired that work? And obviously, you've done a lot of Mother 3 stuff as well. But kind of how is Earthbound and that series influenced your work?
Well, Earthbound has, in the Mother series in general, have really inspired me as an artist since I first got into Earthbound. Which, I mean, that's been like a big portion of my life at this point since I was 14 when I first played Earthbound, and now I'm 22. So it's been quite a while. I mean, of course, like not as long as many people who are in the fandom, but I think like it's just had such a profound impact on me as like an artist and my drawings. For years now, I've really liked drawing fan art of the series. I haven't been drawing much lately because I've been working a lot, but when I first played Earthbound and Mother 3 and even Earthbound Beginnings, but all three of them really sparked like a just creative drive within me where I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to draw these characters, I want to draw all this stuff. And it was one of those things that really just inspired me, and I have trouble finding motivation. I post artwork like very, very infrequently because just my motivation and creative drive is just all over the place. But the Mother series is something that I've always been able to come back to as sort of like a creative inspiration that gives me a lot of ideas and just makes me feel motivated to make something whenever I go back to it.
That's really cool. And again, a lot of your artwork has a lot of playfulness and a lot of light to it, which definitely corresponds and links up with that. Yeah, you can definitely see some parallels. Jonathan, what about you, man? How where did your content creation kind of come from?
Well, this might be a bit of a silly story, but to put it in short, I back in 2021 was a little dissatisfied with the coverage Earthbound 64 had gotten, particularly on YouTube. I was like, wow, there really needs to be some better videos on this, because I know this is interesting. I know this topic, people will find it interesting, and it is cool, but someone needs to make these videos. And I think at that point, I had just realized I don't think anyone's going to do this, so I better do this myself. And it all sort of spiraled from there, because I was like, okay, I'll make this Earthbound 64 iceberg video. And then while I was making that, I was like, oh, this is a cool idea for a video. And then just so on and so forth. For the past couple of years, I've just been like, oh, I want to make a video on that. And most of them happen to be videos on the Mother series, so there you go.
No, I think it's really great. So you found I'll say a hole in the market, but you found a niche and you decided let's just fulfill that, because it's a game you're passionate about, and it's a concept you're passionate about as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, well, I love Earthbound, obviously, but I do like Me Mother 3 a lot, and there's not nearly as many videos on that, and definitely not nearly as many videos on the unreleased N64 version. So that really, really drove me to start making videos.
Very cool. One of your most popular ones is that the Mother 3 Game Boy Advance iceberg.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a really fun concept. I love that.
And that was a fun video to make because Katie got to help out with some art and a little bit of the voices in that as well.
That's super fun. How was it collaborating on that piece?
That was definitely fun. It was worth waiting a little bit extra for that video to be done so Katie could draw all that art for it. And yeah, it was just fun talking about Mother 3 GBA stuff for that video too, because obviously me and Katie really like the GBA version of Mother 3, just to clarify to anyone unsure because of our Earthbound 64 bias, but yeah, it was just fun because it's like, oh well, I really like Katie obviously, and like getting to make like a video with her, like that's awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I will say, like, the only difficult part of it is my creative process often takes me a long time, just because I'm kind of a perfectionist and I end up spending a long time on things. So the only difficult part that comes from collaborating for me is just like I felt kind of like, oh, I have to rush myself because I didn't want to keep Jonathan waiting for a really long time, because with my art, I kind of just feel like I could just keep going forever. Like I could just keep working on something and I have trouble being like, okay, it's time to stop. It's done. So that can be a little difficult. So it was kind of a good challenge for me to try to work on a more like timely basis to get things finished faster than I usually would. I would say it was a good challenge, and I was pretty happy with the stuff I did make for his video. It wasn't like actually a whole lot, but I made a couple pieces for his video, and I was really happy with how they were included with his video, and like how our work ended up shaping together, I guess. I was really happy with the result of that, and it was really cool actually seeing it in the video and being like, oh yeah, this is what we were working towards.
I love that. I love the fact, again, that you were able to collaborate and continue to connect via that creation. Jonathan, how did it feel waking up? I'm not sure I was waking up one morning to find you had 23,000 views on that video. That's gotta be pretty cool. I've never gotten 23,000 anything. So yeah, I'd love to hear about how you felt about that. That's just cool.
Very gratifying. Like, wow, I really was able to let people know about this stuff that I found cool, because I definitely find unused content in games to be pretty cool. And, there's lots of channels out there that make tons and tons of videos on unused content in games. Some people talk about the unused content in Earthbound, but the unused content in Mother 3 is, I feel comparatively to how much people talk about that game, I feel like the unused content in that gets really overshadowed, because there's so much interesting there. And I was just happy, because it's like, yay, I got to tell people about stuff I find cool about this game, that I accomplished my mission.
And to finally round out this episode of Side Quests, we have two more people to share. First one is J.R. Sommerfeldt. He's been on the show a number of times, most recently in the Mario Paint episode. He's most well known for his work at thepixels.com. That's the-pixels.com. And he's also a very talented artist. He specializes in felt, I don't say stuffed animals. That's not the right, that's not the right terminology. But he creates little creatures and artwork using a natural felt, and he's very talented, really cool stuff. I still need to commission him to make me a little Toonberry from Final Fantasy. I need a Toonberry in my life. A little knife-wielding monster needs to happen. He comes on to talk about his intro to games and some other topics that we chatted about but never quite made the initial episodes. And then finally, Kyle VonKubik of Read Only Magazine shares his introduction to games and some of the work he's been doing in the retro video game arena. I can't remember exactly where we kind of left off. Let's just kind of start from the beginning, and let's talk a bit about just kind of your start with games, that first entry point, little introduction, and that way we can get to know you a little better and kind of what your history with games is a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I have been playing video games for probably as long as I can remember. I was born in 1983 in actually Yokota Air Force Base, Japan, which is interesting because my father was Air Forceman. He was in the Air Force, and he was kind of what you would call a proto gamer. He had a lot of things that he did that were, I think they were pretty cool. He started off with the Atari, 2600, and even before I was born, he had been playing video games. And so he kind of introduced it to me. The earliest gaming memory that I have is going to a local diner and there was like this arcade cabinet of Dig Dug there, and my father lifted me up, put me on his knee, and gave me a quarter and let me play Dig Dug, and that game was absolutely terrifying.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's so fun.
And so that was kind of my introduction into video games. And then just got a Nintendo. Every new system that came out, and really we went the Nintendo route in our family. So every new Nintendo system that came out, we got Nintendo, got the Game Boy, got the Super Nintendo, and of course my dad was right there right alongside me playing. I got to witness him no death beat Castlevania.
Wow.
I know, like the original OG Castlevania.
Wow.
No death. I I was just mind blown. And to this day, my dad will say, yep, that's my claim to fame. Never died.
I think that's so cool you got to share that with your dad. I think that's in a lot of these interviews I've done, for me personally, gaming was always a me thing. My dad was interested, but he never played. My mom really had no interest. And a lot of people I speak to have very similar kind of things. It was an us thing. But to share that with your dad, I think is a really special thing. And it's cool that you were able to maintain that all the way through. It sounds like through your fandom. Does your dad still play a little bit, or is he?
He does.
Yeah, that's so cool.
He recently picked up Red Dead Redemption 2, and
that's so great.
He loves it. Like he'll call me up and he'll say, "Oh yeah, I got into a bar fight today in Red Dead Redemption 2," because he's a big Western fan, and like he's
wow, yeah,
he's 63 years old and still does enjoy games from time to time, and that I just find that really, really interesting because he was never the individual that would push us away to play games. Like it was always something that we would do together. It was when I got a little bit older that I kind of isolated myself a little bit with video games.
Yeah.
And I think that was more of, the 90s, 2K, the games got a little bit more advanced, and he got really busy because, he was raising a family, and I have a younger brother that's 7 years younger than me. And so they were doing all of this family rearing up, and Dad kind of just stepped back a little bit from games, and that's okay. He likes to talk to my son now about video games. He bought a PlayStation 4 just so that my son could have something to play when he goes and visits grandma.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, really special thing, I think, to have family who are into it and can help you not only experience it, but share that experience. I think a big part of gaming that I think a lot of people who don't play forget about is a lot of it is shared experience. And as much as I have fond memories of being in the basement playing Mario or playing Metroid for hours on end, I think there is something special to those communal experiences, and that's cool. You got to have that at a very early age, right from the jump. That's cool.
You look at what's popular today, and you find that community is kind of overlapping the idea of being a solo gamer. And it's not like they're taking away solo gaming. I mean, right now I'm hooked, as is the rest of the world, on Tears of the Kingdom.
Right.
And I mean, I'm playing the game. It's like, this is an amazing game. But the only way that I really truly enjoy it is just go online and just look at all the crazy crap that people are making and trying to do the same thing, and then interact with those people. It's interesting how we have turned gaming, even single player gaming, into a co-op experience through the internet and social media.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the digital playground, right? And now you're kids, you go to the playground after school or during lunch recess and talk about games. And, I would talk to my friends about Final Fantasy and say, oh, this is where you can farm the best ogres outside Crescent City, and have all those conversations. And we've just moved the playground to that digital realm, for better or for worse, right? I mean,
right.
Some, depending on the communities you find yourself in, it can be good, and fortunately, as we all know, Twitter and the like can be a rough space, because the playground now has millions of people as opposed to 10, and you can't see them. But there's something to that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a macro. What would be a macrocosm? Yeah. It's basically, microcosm, whatever. It's basically just looking at the idea of society as being, all of our likes, our dislikes, everything like that, kind of just coalescing into one. And I think that's one of the reasons why I got into art. That's one of the reasons why I got into kind of trying to combine my art and my different talents with gaming because I felt, I could contribute something to this social hodgepodge that's going into it, because never before, because growing up, I had this dream of writing for Nintendo Power magazine. I think most children did. I mean,
I'm sure, right? Yeah,
you
totally.
know, like I would read Nintendo Power and be like, I could do that. I can write this. I can play a video game and write something. And now, now we have the internet and you can do that. But then the question is anyone listening? And I found that with art and with kind of branching out and showing people a different side of gaming, like it can be something that can be enjoyed by not just a small group of people, but by others as well. I can't tell you how many grandmothers have looked at some of the stuff that I've made, because I love making Kirby's, and they've been like, I love this. I don't even know who this is, but I want this. It's like,
it's gratifying. It's got to be very gratifying to get that feedback.
It is.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, and as far as it goes to writing, do you work a lot with and I apologize, I should probably know this ahead of time. Do you write with the Pixels and Well Red Mage?
I do.
You do. I thought you'd. Yeah, so you have that outlet, right, on a great site with a great community. Yeah.
Yeah. Red and the gang. I'm a big supporter of that, and not just with the writing, but also monetarily, because I feel that at my station in life right now, like where I am, because I'm actually a licensed and professional therapist. That is my job. It does pretty good, and with that, I can start supporting people that I see their mission, I see what they're trying to do, and what I'm trying to do aligns with that. And so it's neat growing older as a gamer, because then you're like, I've got more resources that I can contribute than just my interest.
That's great. Yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah. No, I think that's great, and I love the fact that you've made that conscious, intentional decision to support people who are kind of aligned with your feeling on not just on games, but the way that these things should be talked about and created. We all know Red has a very specific vision for the way he feels about art criticism and how video games and how that fits into that realm. And I agree. I think it's really cool that, again, as you get older, we have more disposable income, and of course we have kids and we got to worry about all that stuff. But
yeah, I mean, nothing's really disposable if you look at it.
No, it really isn't. Let's be honest. That's 100% correct. You're right. But I will say that it's cool that you had that opportunity for sure. Before we get started, I'd love to hear a bit about your entry point into video games, maybe your first experiences, and one or two titles that really connect with you on a personal level, maybe other than Earthbound. So, I'd love to hear a bit of your story.
Sure, I've been playing video games for as long as I can remember. I feel like I may have come out of the womb with an Atari 2600 because that was
nice.
The first console that I remember having hooked up to a black and white television, of all things.
Wow.
And as far as that console is concerned, some of the titles that I connected with the most would probably be Adventure, Yar's Revenge, some of the staples, the classics. It's important to remember, though, as I'm telling you this, I was born in 83, so the Atari 2600 was done at this point. I was Johnny-come-lately to a lot of video games and video game consoles. When everybody was talking about Super Mario Brothers 2 coming out and how excited they were, that Christmas I got Journey the Escape for the Atari. So.
Wow. Yeah, so you're a little behind the times. That's funny. Okay.
Yes. When I did eventually get a Nintendo, or the NES, some of the games that really connected with me were, of course, the Mario Brother games. I love that Ninja Turtles game. I didn't get very far in it as a kid, but I love that Ninja Turtles game. Mega Man 3 was the Mega Man that I got as a kid, which I loved.
Same. Same. Yep.
Yeah. Again, as I was playing the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo was out. I was always a console generation behind.
Interesting. That's cool. I wonder how that translated to the schoolyard. Now, where are you from originally, out of curiosity?
Oh, I'm from Long Island. I've lived on Long Island all my life.
Yeah, I can tell you're an East Coaster because you refer to it as Mario. You don't say Mario, you say Mario. I'm from Jersey, from North Jersey.
Okay.
And growing up, it was Mario, and I had to like change that as I started doing like shows because people would tease me like, "It's Mario," and I'm like, I grew up saying Mario. I had friends named Mario. Like,
right.
You know, that's how it was. I just had a funny feeling you were East Coast, so
sure.
Cool, man. Real quick though, do you still have that 2600 from when you were a kid?
No, a few years back when I thought the bubble of retro game reselling couldn't get any bigger, I sold off a large swath of my physical collection, keeping only a few things, mainly the handhelds, because for whatever reason, I just love the handhelds.
Yeah.
But all of my consoles, even the ones that I had as a kid, I sold off because, as you become an adult and you are getting married and having children and buying a house, you need money to come up with. And at the time, that's what I did. I don't really regret it because even though I used lots of that money to pay off bills and do adult type things that you should do with money, I did buy a pinball machine as well. So I have a pinball machine in my possession. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. What pinball machine, out of curiosity?
Dungeons and Dragons by Bally. It was
I don't know that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a well-remembered pinball machine, but it's a challenging one, and it's a solid-state machine, but it doesn't have the cool dot matrix display.
Right,
it just has a score. But with that comes less things you have to worry about with the upkeep and maintenance of the machine.
That makes sense. Yeah, and there's something charming about that too. Those old-style Pinbot and whatnot that would just have the scores. There was nothing really fancy on it. That's very cool. Also, real quick too. You were talking about the NES, and you were always a generation behind. Do you? And then you of course talked about your collection. What would you say your kind of your treasured item in your collection happens to be? What do you think the one item where it's like, I am not parting with this. I don't care how much you give me. This one's not leaving my cold, dead hands.
That's a great question because I've given up a lot, but I would have to say it's my entire Game & Watch collection. I don't have a very big Game & Watch collection, but I have most of the dual screen Game & Watches.
Oh, cool.
And I love them. And I don't play them. I just have them. They sit on a shelf, collect dust. But it's just, they're charming. And it's a piece of history that I want to treasure, preserve, and hold on to until my days pass, and then my son is selling it off at a garage sale or something.
Yeah, we never can expect our kids to hold on to the things that we hope they do. It's like, I really hope they hold on to my, all my Zelda-themed handhelds, but nah, it's probably not. It's going to end up someplace, some random place. So, so that's pretty cool, man. So, also, you mentioned Nintendo. Like I said, you were kind of a console behind the 8-ball on that. So what would you say, and you mentioned Ninja Turtles and liking those games, any other games from that era that you really connected with on a personal level? And I go a little further and say, was there a game that turned you from almost like a hobbyist liking games to loving games, that turned that screw for you till, okay, this is something I've fallen in love with?
I mean, video games in general were this escape for me as a kid. And from very early on playing it, the fact that I could manipulate something on screen in a different, quote unquote, virtual world was extremely appealing to me. So I don't know if there was one particular game. I mean, I listed off a few. Certainly Turtles was because of the licensing, right?
Right.
As a, 5 or 6 year old, and again, these are sketches of a memory that I've forced myself to remember. It's not like it's as vivid as it was when I was there.
Sure.
But I can only imagine 6-year-old me controlling that square on the screen of adventure with my Atari and being absolutely amazed that there was multiple screens, there was different worlds I was exploring, there was threats, there was items that I could use. And that kept going as I got older. I was always interested in video games and the creation of video games. However, I grew up in a time where there wasn't such a push for STEM. So to get into computer programming, you had to be an exceptional student, so that way you could take computer programming courses at like a community college or something.
Right,
those things weren't there. They would sit you down in front of a computer and have you type the alphabet with a Sesame Street game, whether it was like the Apple II or a Commodore 64. So I wasn't able to be fostered in that STEM environment, so I never learned how to do that. But I'll tell you, as a kid in 5th grade, I convinced a bunch of friends that we were going to start a video game company by taking our Tiger electronic handhelds and cracking them open and changing the backgrounds behind the screen and like spray painting them and stuff. And we mangled, a good dozen of these things. Nobody was interested in buying them.
That's so funny. I love that idea. That's so good. Hey, let's just change the artwork and keep the guts of it, because it's just jump and attack, right? Those things were pretty rudimentary. Oh, that's really funny. I love that.
We were all scrounging around to find the most generic games, right? You didn't want the ones with licensing. You wanted the one like baseball.
Yeah,
and then we could change the background and make it future baseball or robot baseball or whatever it was.
Oh, I think that's so charming and good. I love that. That's really funny. That's cool, man. I also interesting how you talk about, the barrier of entry to making games was pretty high in those days. Like you had to be like a computer engineer or computer software. And even then those degrees were hard to come by.
Yeah.
It definitely is easier now to enter that world of games. Right on, man. So, tell me also a little bit about the magazine, your other work, and then we'll kind of segue into the main topic. But I'd love to hear about some of the other work you've been doing with our One Rad podcast and Read Only Magazine. I'd love to hear about that.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about it. So this will kind of ebb nicely into Read Only Magazine, because the issue that's coming out next is Make. So it's a quarterly retro gaming fanzine where each issue has a very broad topic or broad theme. So past themes have been fear or adventure or, make or music. So this way it kind of leaves it very broad and open for our contributors to write something that they're passionate about. Mm-hmm. And for Make, I hope to discuss this further about my passion to make games, as well as discuss how WarioWare DIY gave me that first real tangible feeling of being able to make my own little games. But Read Only Magazine's a lot of fun. We have a lot of great contributors, and the goal of that magazine wasn't just to be a video game magazine where there's reviews, right? It was about exploring how video games shape our epistemology, how they shape our personalities, how we relate to them, whether in childhood or adulthood. It was more of like a literary magazine approach to video games. And thankfully, it's really it has grown in that direction. I still like just reviewing games that fit underneath the theme as well. But we have people doing creative writing pieces talking about their childhood and how they remember getting, for instance, there was an article recently in the music issue, getting Dr. Mario and really clicking with the game and remembering the music, and then going to a family function and experiencing the dysfunction within that family and extended family, and relating it to avoiding the viruses and maneuvering through the different roadblocks or obstacles they experienced at 7 or 8,
Sure.
So if that sounds interesting to you, I would implore you to go check out readonlymagazine.com. Aside from that, I've been, a professional artist, quote unquote, for the past decade. I've been selling my artwork, and the medium I've chose is silk screening onto apparel, and that can be checked out at oneradtee.com. And then, yes, I do run a network of podcasts where we talk about nostalgia-based things and retro gaming-based things, and that can be found at oneradpodcast.com. We talk about everything from indie games to old games to Saturday morning cartoons.
Nice. Excellent. I you guys talk about classic Saturday morning cartoons? Because, boy, that was part of my childhood.
Yeah, it's all old cartoons.
Love it. Oh, I absolutely love that concept. That's a really, really great niche there. I'm definitely going to check that out. So, yeah, that sounds like it got a lot of irons in the fire, as they say, but it's really exciting. And I think the magazine's really cool. I think you mentioned when we were in kind of the virtual green room there that it's complementary to this show. I think you're exactly right. It's definitely finding those stories of people. And again, this show also trades in, hey, I like this game because of XYZ, and this thing works, this thing doesn't work. I don't say review, but more of commentary. Mm-hmm. But when it's firing on all cylinders, it's telling those stories. And I think that's a really neat perspective, obviously, because it's kind of, it's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for enjoying this episode of A Gamer Looks at 40. If you haven't done so already, follow me on Twitter at A Gamer Looks at 4040. There's a link tree in the bio. Go there. There's all the links to all the things. Follow me on all the socials. And thank you very much again for checking out the show and being a part of it. Thank you so much to Pete Harney and my good buddy Kevin from the Discord for helping me cut up the interviews. Thank you to my guests for taking all that time to chat with me. And thank you for continuing to listen to A Gamer Looks at 40. Until next time, just be kind to yourselves and each other.